Why do some couples seem to have this magical ability to handle any challenge that comes their way, while others fall apart over the smallest disagreements? I'm about to reveal the hidden psychology that separates thriving relationships from struggling ones. But here's the thing that most relationship experts won't tell you. What I'm sharing isn't just theory. This comes from studying thousands of couples over decades of research. And there are three specific psychological patterns that determine whether your relationship will thrive or barely survive. But here's what's crucial. The third pattern I'll reveal completely changes how you think about love itself. But you need to understand the first two, or it won't make sense. Think about the last relationship you witnessed that just seemed effortless. Maybe it was how they handled conflict, or how they supported each other during stress. There was something different about their dynamic that you couldn't quite put your finger on. That difference isn't what you think it is. Most people believe thriving relationships are about compatibility, communication skills, or finding your soulmate. That's completely wrong. The couples who make it work have discovered something that goes against everything we've been taught about relationships, and once you understand this, you'll never see love the same way again. But before I reveal what that is, you need to understand why most relationships fail in the first place, because this failure pattern is actually the key to everything. Most couples enter relationships carrying invisible wounds from their past. They've developed survival strategies that worked when they were younger, but now sabotage the very connection they're seeking. Here's where it gets interesting, and this is the first psychological pattern that separates thriving couples from the rest. Successful couples haven't eliminated these patterns. They've learned to recognize them and work with them instead of against them. But there's a specific way they do this that most people never figure out. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine two people who both struggle with feeling unheard. In most relationships, this creates a vicious cycle where both partners fight to be understood, talking over each other, becoming more frustrated with every interaction. The relationship becomes a battleground where validation is scarce and resentment builds. But thriving couples do something completely different, and this reveals the second psychological pattern. When they recognize that someone is fighting to be heard, they understand it's because that person learned early on that their voice didn't matter. Instead of competing for airtime, they create space for that wounded part of their partner to finally feel seen. This is where most relationship advice completely misses the mark. It focuses on techniques and communication strategies, but it ignores the deeper psychological reality that's actually driving everything. What thriving couples understand is that beneath every frustrating behavior is usually an unmet need or an old wound trying to heal itself. Think about your own patterns for a moment. What do you do when you feel threatened in a relationship? Do you withdraw, become critical, try to control the situation? Most of us have one or two go-to strategies that feel protective, but actually push our partner away. But here's what the successful couples figured out that changes everything. They've developed what researchers call emotional awareness in real time. When they feel that familiar surge of defensiveness or that urge to shut down, they pause. They recognize it as information rather than truth. But this skill alone isn't enough, because there's something even more powerful happening beneath the surface. This brings me to the third psychological pattern, and this is the one that will completely shift how you think about relationships. The couples who thrive understand that love isn't about finding someone who doesn't trigger you. It's about finding someone who can handle your triggers with compassion while you learn to handle theirs the same way. But here's the part that will blow your mind. They've created what psychologists call psychological safety, where both people can be vulnerable without fear of being attacked or abandoned. This completely transforms how conflict works in the relationship, but the way they create this safety isn't what you'd expect. Instead of trying to avoid triggers or eliminate problems, they use triggers as doorways to deeper intimacy. Picture this scenario. One partner comes home stressed from work and snaps at the other about something trivial. In most relationships, this leads to a fight or someone swallowing their hurt feelings. But in a thriving relationship, the partner who got snapped at recognizes this isn't really about them. They might say something like, "It sounds like you had a really difficult day. Do you want to talk about it, or do you need some space first?" This response completely changes the dynamic, but there's a specific psychological reason why this works so powerfully. It creates what I call emotional spaciousness in the relationship. There's room for both people to have their feelings without those feelings becoming emergencies that need to be fixed or battles that need to be won. They understand that sometimes your partner's bad mood isn't about you, and sometimes your own reaction isn't about what just happened. But this emotional spaciousness is just the foundation for something even more profound. The couples who master this create relationships where both people can be fully human, fully flawed, and fully loved, where triggers become opportunities for connection instead of walls that create distance. Here's what makes this so powerful. When you understand that your partner's difficult behaviors are usually old wounds trying to heal, everything changes. Their criticism isn't really about you, it's about their fear of not being good enough. Their withdrawal isn't rejection, it's their way of protecting themselves from feeling overwhelmed. This doesn't mean you become a doormat or avoid difficult conversations, it's actually the opposite. Because you've created this foundation of safety, you can have much more honest conversations about what's really going on. You can address issues before they become problems and work through challenges without damaging the relationship. The beautiful thing about understanding this hidden psychology is that it's completely learnable. You don't have to wait for the perfect person to show up in your life. You can start developing this emotional intelligence right now, in whatever relationship you're in. You can begin to notice your patterns, create space for your partner's humanity, and build the kind of psychological safety that allows love to flourish. But remember, this only works if you understand all three patterns working together. The couples who thrive haven't found some secret formula or gotten lucky with compatibility. They've simply learned to love each other's humanity instead of trying to love around it. They've discovered that the very things that make us human, our wounds, our triggers, our imperfections, can actually become the foundation for deeper intimacy when we approach them with wisdom and compassion. This is the hidden psychology behind why some relationships thrive while others struggle. It's not about having fewer problems or being more compatible. It's about creating a relationship where both people can show up authentically, support each other's healing, and use every challenge as an opportunity to grow closer rather than drift apart.